Well, I wonder what Jesus would have to say about Twitter. Those of you who say, "You fool," will find themselves in fiery Gehenna. You know, I've tried Twitter a couple of times, and I've made it about a day each time. Speaking of calling people fools, that's kid stuff. But Jesus, he goes beyond the law here, doesn't he? In fact, it seems like he's placing an impossible burden on us, isn't he? You've heard it said not to kill, but I say to you, those who hold anger towards their brother are liable to judgment. Anger? Really? Is it even possible to live without anger? Most of us probably get angry every day, don't we? And the funny thing is Jesus got angry too, didn't he? We see throughout the Gospels Jesus calling out the Pharisees and calling out the sinners. And we know towards the end of his ministry, when he saw the abuses going on within the temple, he got so angry he grabbed a whip and turned over the tables. So what does Jesus mean? Not to be angry. I mean, after all, saying don't get angry is kind of like saying don't get tired, right? Don't get hungry, don't get sad, don't get anything. How can we control our emotions? They're things that happen, right? Well, it took me a long time to really understand this, and I'm still coming to understand it a little bit more. But I believe that what Jesus is getting at is this: to remember that God is a God of love, and love brings forth life. Notice what Jesus says. He says, "Do not kill, but I say to you, do not hold anger." In other words, do not fall into a pattern of resentment, feeling of ill will, wanting what is bad for another. God wants what's good for us. And he wants what's good for all of us. And he calls the same thing for us. He wants us to bring forth life. And so when Jesus calls something out, he's calling it out because it needs to be done away with, for the good of the very person that he's calling it out in. It's an act of love. Sometimes we have to say those hard things for the good of the other that we love. But what we should always pay attention to is, what is our motivation? To be angry is not only natural, sometimes it's called for. We can think of many things in this world that not only is it okay to be angry with, it would be a problem if we weren't. To be angry in the face of injustice, it's not only okay, but it is righteous, as Jesus shows us. To see things that are not right, things that are hurting our world and hurting other people, and to call that out, it's not only okay, it's our obligation to do so. But it's important to remember that it is the thing that we are getting angry with. It is the act, the injustice that we are angry with, in order to liberate the person caught up in it. Jesus says, do not say raka. Well, what does that mean? Well, It was an old Aramaic way of putting someone down. It's another way of saying, you bonehead. It means flat, arid space. In other words, you ain't got nothing going on up in here. To call somebody raka means that to call them stupid, worthless, incapable, an impossible person. There is no hope for this person. Does that call forth life? Jesus calls out injustice for the very sake of the person, to call them forth into new life. And so it's always important that when we find ourselves in the presence of anger, to do a bit of discerning and ask, what is this anger telling me? Why am I angry? And identify the thing itself. Because if we don't, well, then we just attack the person. You fool. You bonehead. You idiot. And that does not call forth new life. And even worse, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't identify what is the thing itself that needs to be addressed. It's never the person, but it's often the thing that that person finds themselves caught up in and inflicted by. Jesus comes to bring forth new life, to speak the words that others need to hear. And sometimes it is a hard message that they do not want, but to speak it in love, always with a mind of hopefulness. Never write anyone off. In other words, Jesus is saying no one is hopeless. Never just cast them aside or make a permanent condemnation of them. So what would Jesus say about Twitter? I don't think he would be a fan. But I think the Lord is inviting us to remember that while it is important for us to speak the truth and to call out injustices and to say those difficult things that the world often doesn't want to hear, that when the world throws insult after insult at us, we do not return in kind. We respond to the issue, but we always call the person to new life in love. That is God's mission. And that is what he wants for us. So sisters and brothers, let us come before this altar once more and pray that the Lord give us a spirit of wisdom to discern the difference between the things that make us angry and the call to truly live as sisters and brothers, bringing forth new life and love.